Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Talking Freight, the weekly freight series brought to you by Cerasis, a North American third-party logistics company specializing in transportation technology and services. So, we have a special episode this week for Thanksgiving. You may notice this little snazzy cardigan I have on here. Have you started planning your Thanksgiving meal yet? Well, by now you've probably thought about all the logistical details like what items are required to bring the meal together, who's responsible for bringing each dish, what time guests should arrive, and where dinner should be served so there's enough room for everyone. Without having full knowledge and control over many of these elements, you can only trust that everyone involved will come through, on time and as promised. You have no way to tell beforehand that a guest is going to hold up dinner by arriving 45 minutes late, or that someone will forget to bring the mashed potatoes, or that unexpected guest shows up, requiring even more space at the table. The same is true for logistics planning. It must have a contingency, as you sometimes aren't prepared for the unseen. As we see this year, there are more cars on the road, meaning carriers want that attractive freight, and we are also seeing tight capacity. Like the holidays, the best ones spent are those that had great planning and execution. Don't let the bird not be the star of the show. Make sure your freight is ready to go. Below, we're going to talk about some updates, and we're also going to have a lot of links and resources in the description, so check that out. Now, let's talk about some of the expected travel for this holiday season, and then I want to tell you a personal story where I compare preparing a Thanksgiving meal to logistics. I hope you enjoy. So, let's talk about consumers. They're spending more traveling time on the road, they're spending more money, and of course that means the holiday crunch for planning transportation is here. So let's talk about the more cars and more planning. So, like Thanksgiving, logistics is no simple undertaking. To pull off logistics effectively, it takes a lot of expert planning, assembling the right mix of people, communication, working together, and of course, if something goes wrong, that contingency plan. The key word here is plan. Shipping during the holidays does not have to be a source of frustration. However, smooth holiday shipping requires significant planning ahead of time. In the United States, for example, Thanksgiving brings the logistics industry to a screeching halt on Thursday and Black Friday. In fact, the number of Americans traveling more than 50 miles by car for Thanksgiving weekend will rise 4.3% from last year to 41.3 million, according to AAA. About 90% of travelers will take a road trip during the holiday travel period from November 20th to November 24th, and will pay the lowest Thanksgiving price for fuel in several years. Holiday joy has come early this year, with Americans likely to pay the lowest Thanksgiving gas prices since 2009. Lower prices are increasing disposable income and enabling families to carve out more money from household budgets for travel this Thanksgiving. AAA Chief Operating Officer Marshall Doney said in a recent statement, "Total travel volume is expected to rise to a 7-year high, as 46.3 million Americans will travel more than 50 miles, with an average distance traveled of 549 miles round trip. This year, more Americans will give thanks for the opportunity to travel to friends and family than any year since 2007. So, because they're traveling and they have a bit more disposable income, consumers are ready to buy this holiday season. So, we recommend that you lean on, as a shipper, a handy 3PL to not get mired in all of that muck. Over the past month, America has experienced some of the lowest gas prices in over a decade. That's just not good news for consumers. That means capacity is opening up for freight carriers. But while this has eased the capacity crunch temporarily, shippers know that this ease in capacity won't be long term. Gas prices will hike back up, especially as we get closer to the Christmas season. This time of year can mean peak busyness or slowness depending on your industry. Even with the seasonality of winter shipments, the market is unpredictable. So how can shippers stay ahead? If not already outsourcing to a logistics provider, we recommend finding a 3PL that coordinates shipments nationwide. These providers know the market and know which carriers and routes will be the best fit for their clients. They can also manage vendor compliance during inbound and outbound freight shipping, which is key during the holidays when manufacturers are distributing product to thousands of retailers. Now that we talked a little bit about shipping and the congestion that you might experience and how you need to start thinking about how that will affect your freight, let's talk about a personal Thanksgiving story of mine and how it compares to logistics functions. So this year, I am hosting Thanksgiving at my house. So I thought I would walk you through the main steps of planning a hosted Thanksgiving and adding a fun note about how that works in the logistics side of things. And they do parallel oh so nicely. So, the logistics of planning weekly meals is one thing, but Thanksgiving is no joke. There are obvious benefits to hosting, but there's also a lot of challenges as well. You gotta get raw materials, or groceries. You gotta work on manufacturing, or what I call preparation. You then gotta do your delivery, which I call the presentation part, and a lot of other things to consider. So I did find some great resources online to help me out with my own planning, as of course, the first step in any planning is research and understanding the lay of the land. Every great logistician knows, lean on the experts and use fundamental best practices from multiple sources to put together a logistics plan that is sound. For a link to those resources, check out the description of this video. Now, the first step is to brainstorm the menu options. I'm considering absolute advantage. My mom takes the stuffing my grandmother used to make exactly how I remember it. She has absolute advantage here. She would like to make it. It will turn out awesome and we'll all remember my granny with fond memories. My family can tell you about the last time I tried to make this. My mother-in-law uses her hands to manufacture perfectly stuffed and creased pierogies. We're talking about quality pierogies here. She only likes to make them on special occasions, and she always makes enough for frozen treats later. Again, in my book, that's absolute advantage. Why? Because outsourcing is a good thing. So what's the logistics angle on that? Okay, yes, Cerasis. We're an outsourced logistics service provider, and I went there. But it helps. I recommend outsourcing what you're able in the logistics process that you may not be good at, that is outside your domain expertise. In this case, I can't make pierogies, but Granny sure can. This allows you to focus on the overall strategy, and so you can also enjoy the benefits of logistics outsourcing. Improved customer service, better management, continuous improvement through data-driven decisions, versus being mired down trying to perfect something that is not of interest to you when someone can do it faster, better, and in the end, a better use of your own expert resources. The next step is figure out what's needed in all of your ingredients and what you need to prepare and make a list. Of course, avoid grocery store chaos and separate the list out into a buy now and the buy 2 days before. I've learned from past experiences that trying to get everything all at once generally fails and results in aggravation. The less you're scrambling on figuring out what to buy for the big meal on Thanksgiving Day, the more confident you will be when it comes execution time. And during the meal, no one wants to head over to the local grocery chain and pick up things like salt. So what's the logistics angle there? Well, I look at figuring out what you need for logistics as knowing who are your players in the shipping realm. Do you know your freight classes? Do you know what carriers you can choose and generally know how much they cost? No one wants a big order to a new customer delayed because you don't have the carriers on board or know how to process the shipment correctly. The next area of the big Thanksgiving dinner. Prep as much as possible the night before. I can remember one year when I failed to check that the turkey had thawed all the way. A little planning this time around and we'll be all set. I'll make sure that it's thawed out just in case. So a little corrective action and continuous improvement in that. Very good stuff. It is through this continual learning I have been able to learn that things like dips, salads, and the like can all be prepared the night before. So what's our logistics angle there? Well, do you have the ability to learn from your logistics failures? And how do you track those failures? Are you proactively focusing on working with those in your ecosystem to improve delivery times, carrier performance, and supplier performance? It's vital to be able to not only track your logistics activity and make future business decisions from which you can improve, but also work with your suppliers to create a fantastic inbound freight program. The key is continual improvement, like in Kaizen, to eliminate waste and decrease errors. Other areas of prep in the logistics world comes in the way of integration of systems between your TMS and your ERP. So your commodities and address book are already loaded in your transportation management system, allowing you to decrease errors by eliminating manual entry for processing freight for transportation. And of course, the last thing in any good Thanksgiving, even with all of the stress, is to have fun. Thanksgiving is a holiday that I really enjoy. When it comes to quality of life, there's really just no better time. Reconnecting with family and enjoying a meal you've all worked to make happen is incredibly rewarding. So make sure you plan, just like the logistics pros, so you can enjoy the holiday and focus on the good times and not the bad times. And of course, a little football. In conclusion, good planning separates the holidays to remember from the ones you forget. And in the logistics side of things, you really don't want to remember a shipment, as a shipment you don't remember is one that went well. So how are you celebrating your Thanksgiving this week? Let us know in the comments below, or follow us here on social media and drop us a line. Oh, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode of Talking Freight, published every Friday. And finally, from everyone here at Cerasis, we wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. Have a good one.